Spuneam într-un episod anterior că am fost în Londra pentru un proiect frumos. E bine, în acest episod o să vedeți motivul real pentru care am vizitat Regatul Unit al Marii Britanii și Irlandei de Nord. Are legătură cu dinosaurii. După 25 de ani, BBC readuce pe ecran unul dintre cele mai mari și impresionante proiecte ale sale. A apărut la TV la finalul lui 1999 și pe DVD în noul mileniu. Revine cu imagini spectaculoase, povești unice și călătorii cu milioane de ani în urmă. Din studiourile BBC Studio Science Unit avem Wallking with Dinosaurs, o producție care urmărește viața unor creaturi pe care încă le mai studiem cu fascinație. Proiectul a luat câțiva ani, ne uităm la 2 ani pentru producție, filmări pe mai multe continente și o echipă mare de paleontologi plus cercetători în domeniu, totul pentru ca BBC să revină cu 6 episoade în care spun poveștile extraordinare a creaturilor pe care le mai studiem și care ne fascinează până în ziua de astăzi. De la deșertul Sahara până în munții din Montana vom desfășura povestea 84 de milioane de ani de la dinozauri. De această dată, BBC folosește tot avansul tehnologic din ultimele 2 decenii jumătate și se folosește de artiști în dinozauri pentru a aduce aceste creaturi cât mai aproape de cea mai fidelă reproducere a creaturilor de când erau vii. Pentru fiecare episod în parte au existat oameni de știință care au luat parte activ la proiectare, asigurându-se că efectele speciale reflectă realitatea, iar această echipă de efecte speciale a lucrat 2 ani și jumătate pentru a aduce creaturile la viață. Kirsty Wilson a fost showrunnerul seriei, iar echipa ei s-a asigurat că informațiile sunt verificate științific. Pentru asta l-am avut ca reprezentant pe paleontologul Dr. Ibrahim Nizar, care a fost foarte amuzant, a făcut pe toată lumea să râdă cu atitudinea sa de Indiana Jones. Omul a spus la un moment dat că vă uitați la mine că sunt murdar, dar să știți că sunt oasele dinozaurilor pe picioare, pentru că era efectiv, avea lut pe bocanci tocmai venise de la situl arheologic, ceea ce a adăugat un element de realism și de conectare la dinozauri. S-a vorbit despre faptul că a avut loc un eveniment unic, ieșit din comun, în timp ce se găsesc foarte greu oase de pterozauri pentru că sunt mici și fragile, au găsit chiar un ou întreg, intact. De asemenea, echipa BBC, în timp ce săpa în regiunea Pipestone, unde se așteptau să găsească între 100 și 300 de oase pe an, au fost surprinși să afle că în ultimele decenii nu a găsit nimeni un craniu. Până acum, după săpături de 30 de ani fără un cap, au descoperit primul craniu pe care l-au numit Big Sam, după unul dintre membrii echipei de filmare, iar ideile din Walking with Dinosaurs vor să ne aducă mai aproape de realitatea dinozaurilor, să-i înțelegem, să vedem, ne pun cumva într-o zi sau o săptămână din viața unui dinozaur. În primul episod pe care l-am văzut, avem povestea lui Clover, un dinozaur care ar fi trebuit să ajungă la 8 tone, însă a fost descoperit mic, ca și pui. Ni se explică în serial că aceasta era realitatea din nefericire, undeva la 70% din sărmanii pui nu ajungeau la maturitate, însă nu vreau să stric motivul morții și primul episod, așa că nu vă vorbesc mai mult despre treaba asta. Mergeți și vedeți serialul, cel mai probabil este deja disponibil pentru a fi urmărit. În episodul al doilea avem o descoperire a paleontologului Nizar Ibrahim, care în marginea Saharei de Vest descoperă împreună cu echipa sa scheletul celui mai mare prădător dintre dinozauri, respectiv gigantul Spinosaurus. Acesta prin numele de Sobek. Ca să nu stric surpriza și uimirea pe care și eu le-am simțit, a fost fain să vezi începutul noului serial. Am să spun doar câteva lucruri pe care le mai puteți vedea noi în această serie Walking with Dinosaurs de la BBC. O să ai povestea lui George, un Gastonia care, deși bine înarmat de la natură, nu era cel mai curajos. O avem pe Rose, Albie și Old Grand, 3 membri unici ai speciei lor, 3 giganți ai planete, 3 creaturi uimitoare care au mers pe locurile pe care mergem și noi astăzi și multe alte lucruri de descoperit despre povestea lor. Walking with Dinosaurs îmbină lumea științifică și descoperirile incredibile ale paleontologilor cu efectele speciale, creând o lume despre care e greu de crezut că a existat, în ciuda dovezilor. Cum e să faci o astfel de producție, cum de mai există oameni fascinați de dinozauri și cum reușești să regizezi, să scrii, să torni asemenea povești fără a cădea în capcana senzaționalismului Hollywood, sunt curiozități la care au avut bunătatea și timpul de a-mi răspunde chiar membrii echipei care s-au ocupat de acest serial pentru BBC, de la showrunner până la Dr. Ibrahim Nizar și artista principală care a adus imaginea celor creaturi la viață. A întrebat-o, chiar avea ochii mov? Da, am găsit pigment prin zonă. Așa ar fi trebuit să arate aceste găini uriașe. Și da, una dintre întrebări care era și ți-o stric de acum, dacă am putea sau am fi putut avut dinozauri în ziua de astăzi, doctorul Ibrahim Nizar a spus că nu doar că am fi putut, avem dinozauri, găinile. În lipsa unei explicații, oricum mai vreau să o iei de lungă, găinile sunt dinozauri. Au toate caracteristicile unui dinozaur, pentru că și dinozaurii aveau pene și seamănă, găinile sunt dinozauri. Deci noi mâncăm dinozauri în fiecare zi. Dacă mâncăm găini în fiecare zi. First question about dedicating your career. How about the skeptics? Are they far and far between, or instead they are ignoring all the evidence that you have and still believe their own thing?
I think there's a lot of, especially in recent times, misinformation is quite prevalent. It does show up a lot. In fact, there are entire YouTube channels dedicated to debunking some of these.
This is how I started.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly that. And with paleontology too, with dinosaurs, because they are quite fantastical creatures, and a lot of people dedicate their whole lives to uncovering more about them because of the fact they're so fantastical. But for the people that don't, for the people who know about them sort of at a distance, it can be quite appealing to lean into weirder theories about them that maybe aren't actually backed up by the science.
Mm-hmm.
So there are definitely skeptics that we encounter, but I think the fact that people like us have very much dedicated our careers to the science and to communicating that science is a testament to just how cool the actual science is, I think.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that yes, science is under attack in some aspects, and it's also true for things like evolution and paleontology. There are some people who believe that humans and dinosaurs walked the earth.
There are some shapes with dinosaur and human. They've been debunked for years, and still people believe them.
Yes, so I think programs like Walking with Dinosaurs hopefully will really help people understand how we gather our evidence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are even some people who believe that dinosaur bones don't exist, right? And I think actually seeing people getting them out of the ground is actually a very powerful way of showing just how our science is conducted and how we literally get them out of the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think these guys have kind of said it all. Yeah, pretty much.
If dinosaurs hadn't gone extinct, like T-Rexes and what I wrote, Spinosauruses, how do you think they would have looked today?
Well, that's the thing. We both of us love saying this, but dinosaurs are not extinct. Birds are dinosaurs.
Okay, yeah.
They're not even related to dinosaurs. They are dinosaurs. The ones that didn't go extinct eventually look like the ones we have today. If you look at an ostrich's foot, for example, if you look at an ostrich leg, you can't look at that and tell me it doesn't look like the leg of T-Rex because they have the same anatomy. With a lot, if the bigger species like T-Rex, like Spinosaurus, didn't go extinct, we just have no way of knowing because that is 66 million years of evolution that will have happened in that period.
Mm-hmm.
They could have gone in all sorts of directions. The one thing we know about evolution is that it is unbelievably unpredictable. It just goes in all sorts of bonkers direction. For example, we were just talking about penguins. Like the fact that penguins evolved is kind of unbelievable.
Why?
Because we know about them, right? We are used to them and they seem very normal to us. But if you really think about it, a bird evolving to live in the Arctic that swims and is covered in blubber is like, well, not blubber, but like a smooth outer covering like that. It's a weird thought. It's a strange animal. We're just used to these ideas. Evolution does run wild, so there's no way of really knowing.
Yeah, I mean, it is fun sometimes to speculate, not necessarily about what happens would have happened after the extinction of animals like T-Rex and so on, but Spinosaurus, since you mentioned that particular dinosaur, is a dinosaur that spent a lot of time in the water. It has all of these amazing adaptations, which in some ways reflect or mirror what we might see in other groups, like early whales, where the hind limbs get shorter, the bones become heavy for buoyancy control. And so we can speculate, would some descendants of Spinosaurus have turned into even more aquatic creatures in the same way that we have, whales and dolphins and so on. But that's obviously kind of, very speculative. But yeah, sometimes you do wonder.
Being so closely involved in this project, were you ever concerned that the findings you've uncovered over the years with your research might be misinterpreted in ways that could discredit the work of paleontologists?
Look at me.
That's I think why we work so closely with the paleontologists.
Yeah.
In this series, we're very privileged to have very close relationships with the scientists we feature, and that's really important because we want to depict their work as best we can, and we constantly have conversations with them back and forth to make sure we don't misinterpret anything. Or
I think we're not. I don't think we ever worried about that. I think if we were worried about that from the outset, then we wouldn't feel confident in doing what we do as filmmakers, and certainly at BBC Studios.
Yeah.
I think the heart of what the science unit does is speak to the science whilst ensuring that we entertain people, but the science is at the core of what we do. So that's always an element we're very confident about. And as Nazar was saying earlier, and it's very nice to hear that I think he feels that his work has been respected. There's always compromises along the way because bringing these two different disciplines together, there's always going to be compromises. But at the heart of it was making sure that the experts who are bringing their life's work to screen felt respected and felt listened to, and that we were accurately reflecting as far as we possibly could what they were discovering in the field.
Okay. So the purple eyeliner of the T-Rex, it looks great, but it's like purple around his eyes.
Oh, so you mean the kind of red coloration at the top? Again, I mean, everything that we did, it goes through rounds and rounds of being checked by multiple experts. And actually, quite often, the colours that you see on these animals are actually derived from our experts' recommendations. So Jay mentioned earlier that she would do multiple colourways, she would do different options of what the colours of these animals would look like. But that wouldn't be in isolation. That would go back to the experts, be informed by the experts. So there were no surprises for our experts.
And it's interesting you mentioned that specifically, because that is something that came out of the fact that we spoke to scientists and we were learning about the fact that on animals like Tyrannosaurus, on Albertosaurus, which is like a smaller T-Rex, they've got these interesting structures around their eyes, these little crests and stuff like that. And it does seem more and more likely that those were used to show off to each other, to display for each other. And in the animal kingdom, birds, reptiles, butterflies, display features tend to be either colorful or big or ostentatious in some way to attract attention. And that's kind of what we reflect in this. And even the types of colors we chose, we spoke to paleontologists. What pigments make sense? Is this animal going to have, does it need a specific diet to get this color, or can we depict it without it being too unreasonable? So it was a lot of back and forth, but everything was very much done in collaboration with our scientists.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that, of course, science always evolves, and that's a beautiful thing about science. It's not based on revelation or some kind of written in stone kind of story. It changes as more evidence comes in. And so, of course, we'll always refine our models, our reconstructions, our hypotheses. But this is the very best kind of snapshot in time of where we are in dinosaur science, right? This is kind of like, very much at the cutting edge. I also think that sometimes we focus maybe a little too much on, relatively minor details that we may not be able to prove in a court of law, if you say, like, is it this? Because I think, you mentioned history earlier on. When you put together a documentary film on, ancient Rome or whatever it might be, there will always be a few things that we do not know for, with 100% certainty. We can make all sorts of informed guesses. We can look at the evidence that's there. I think it was just a few days ago where they found the gladiator skeleton with the lion bite marks, right?
Yes.
We had a lot of contextual evidence from images and all sorts of other things. And now we even have like some actual physical evidence. So I think that's true for so many things that happened in the past. We will never know every detail of Cleopatra's life or whatever it might be. But I think what we really should be celebrating and I think focusing on is just how many things we can actually say about these creatures, in terms of their soft tissues, the way they moved around, their biomechanics, their evolutionary history. And that's pretty incredible considering how long ago they lived.
About Rome, we found pigment a few years back on statues and we painted them how they should have been, and we hate them. Isn't the same case with dinosaurs? Because they're quite monochromatic, and when you watch other birds, they're really colorful. Are you toning them down just not to scare people away?
No, actually, we do have some really interesting dinosaur coloration. In some of our other episodes, we have some really quite vibrant animals that quite are quite out there
Okay.
sometimes. But these are all, again, based on science and based on
You
looking...
found pigment. You said earlier that you
Not on
found...
any of our specific animals, but on many related species, we have found pigments. For example, there are pigments in armored dinosaurs to help inform the sort of colors on our armored dinosaurs. They may not be the same species,
Okay.
but they share features, and therefore we can make those kind of assumptions. But like the natural world today, there are some very vibrant animals and some more muted animals, and we kind of have that great diversity of colors in our films.
Okay, the first season was 25 years ago. You didn't have YouTube then, so a bootleg version of anything, you had something to watch. Today, kids have a lot of things to watch. What do you think the impact will be on your TV show compared to that of the show 20 years ago?
So you're right. The way that production works today, the amount of content that is available to people, the landscape is completely different. I think the beauty of this series is, and I hope what will draw viewers to it is what drew viewers to it 25 years ago, that this is viewing for everybody and all the family. So, you know, I have a 3-year-old at home. I know that she's, you know, already been showing her sneak previews. I know she's totally gripped. I know that my parents will watch it. I think that's the beauty of it. I think everyone will still be drawn to it. It's great family viewing. Everyone will sit down together. It's something for a whole family to enjoy. And I think whether there are lots of different ways of consuming content or not, that's still going to draw people in. And the other thing is, you know, we've got an opportunity now for people globally to come to the series. We've got multiple co-producers across the world, co-partners across the world, and I think, you know, people like yourself talking about this on YouTube hopefully will draw even more people in to watch it. So actually I think the opportunity to get our series out there is only grown.
I think that's a really good point, and I think you know, in that vein, there was an actual scientific study, academic study, was conducted by some very famous U.S. universities, and they looked at areas of interest of, you know, liberals and conservatives and everything in between in the United States. There are a lot of things that they didn't agree on in terms of, you know, the things they typically watch and do and read, but pretty much the one thing they could all agree on is that dinosaurs are awesome.
Yes.
So that's really the great unifier, dinosaurs, right? I mean, I think it is a real universal appeal, and I think in that sense it really is an easy sell.
Okay, so continuing that thought, what is about dinosaurs that has fascinated you the most?
Yeah, I was saying earlier, one of my favorite things about them is they feel like the dragons you read about in myths and fairy tales and legends, but they're real. They were there. You can go find their bones. That is the coolest thing. The fact that these things are so much larger than life. Some of these animals weighed as much as like a herd of elephants. Some of these animals had bonkers sails on their backs. You know, some of them had feathers like we've never seen before. There are so many different unique things about these animals we don't see today anymore, and something really special about knowing they once lived here. You know, they walked the same ground we did. They lived on the same planet. It's really incredible, and I think any kid that first learns about them is immediately hooked. It's just something that's larger than life, basically.
I think I was telling you earlier on that I think dinosaurs are so over the top awesome. They're so much more awesome than they really have any right to be. It's really evolution gone wild, you know. It's just like you look at some of these dinosaurs and it's just like, you know, how many amazing features do you want to have in your anatomy? It's like, yes. And then you end up with these really incredible animals. And I think that's why I can't think of a single person, you know, like, even if they say like they don't really care about natural history or science or whatever, I don't think that you can walk into one of these big museum halls and you see these alien-looking towering skeletons and not be awed. And your imagination runs wild and you try to figure out what these animals would have looked like and how they behaved and so on. And I think that's what we're doing with Walking with Dinosaurs. We're really resurrecting these creatures, and I think that's the thing that I find so amazing, you know. They're just, you know, so over the top awesome. It's really hard to put into words, but I think visually we convey that message hopefully in some of these really striking sequences.
And I think what I love about them is almost kind of the reverse, is the fact that they are crazy and larger than life, and they seem sort of these mad constructs. But the amount of times I've been asked since doing this series, are dinosaurs real? really surprised me. There are so many people out there, you talk about skeptics, they don't even believe that they exist, that kind of think they're mythical beasts. And I think what I love about Dinosaurs and doing this series is, yes, they are bonkers and they are mad, but they also were real animals. You know, had these complexities to them, they had their offspring, they had the challenges that they faced. And if you took an animal from the modern world today, you know, there's lots of things that are relatable about it. And that's what I really loved it. And I really hope that people come to the series and kind of fall in love with them and think they are crazy awesome, but then also think, wow, they had real lives.
So my next question was, what was the core message or insight you most wanted viewers to take away? Which I believe it was that one.
Yeah.
I think that kind of is the core message. I think also really important message for us, you know, at BBC Studios and the Science Unit is that kind of curiosity. We want to inspire that in people. That, you know, I think a lot of people think there's a lot of things that we know and it's all wrapped up with a bow and it's all done, it's all finished. But as I said, we're kind of at the cutting edge of science, at the cutting edge of these new discoveries, working with getting incredible access to sites such as Nazar's, because we want to encourage people to continue to be curious about the world around us and to be inspired.
Yeah, I like to think of the series, it's not just a celebration of the dinosaurs, it's a celebration of paleontology as a science. It's really important that, you know, we can show off how incredible the animals were, but there's only one way we ever know about that, and it's through the work of people like Nazar, who are out there in the field digging up bones. And I hope that, you know, that inspires other people, kids especially, to get into science, to learn about that ability to discover new things and kind of fall in love with it.
After years of dedicated work on the project, with long-standing background in producing science-based content, what is, in your opinion, the greatest barrier between the general public and science? What remains the biggest challenge in making educational content truly engaging and accessible to a broad audience?
I think the key thing is the word science in itself, right? Because I think people say the word science sometimes and they think of people in white coats doing things that they don't understand, that are kind of geeky or nerdy or too complicated. But science isn't, you know, something that sort of sits aside from all of us. It's everywhere. It's our, you know, it's all around us all the time. It's kind of, you know, we live it and breathe it and engage with it every day. And so I think one of the key things that we try to do at the Science Unit is to change people's perspectives of that. Whether it's kind of a difficulty or a barrier or just a challenge, actually more of a challenge that we really want to take on and engage with. It's through programs like this. It's through going, do you know what, you can sit down and watch a show about a really cool dinosaur for an hour and enjoy it with your family. And by the way, that's science. And so I think that's kind of the thing that we're always trying to push is, you know, science is you, me, everybody, and it's not something that's boring, it's something that's critical and fun and engaging.
I think one thing I would add is that I think one of the big challenges in the public perception of science and in our efforts to communicate science to the public is that I think many people do not really understand the scientific method and the process of science. And we've seen this, you know, whether it's in climate science or pandemic science or whatever it might be. People are genuinely surprised that scientists change their minds on things as more evidence comes in. And, you know, so it's not set in stone. You do not always get a straight, comprehensive answer to everything. You know, it's sometimes
use that as an argument against you. You change your mind. You
exactly,
change it again.
Exactly. And so I think
we have to change our mind.
Exactly, and I think that's what really sets science apart, and that's the thing that has allowed science to, you know, give us longer lives and, you know, vital medicine and amazing discoveries about our universe and all sorts of things. It's that very process, this self-correcting process, you know, in small incremental steps. And I think in working with dinosaurs, we have an amazing opportunity to use this format. You know, everybody loves dinosaurs, they're awesome and so on. But then we also convey these very important messages of how science is actually conducted. You know, you actually see the evidence gathering and, you know, maybe changing preconceived ideas and revisiting older ideas. And that, I think, is a really important part of the process, understanding how science really works at its core.
Okay. How do you resist the temptation to exaggerate the stories or to add sensational elements behind what's necessary, especially when trying to capture and hold the audience attention? or do you do the actual opposite? You include less information because it would be too much, too heavy, and would be rejected by the audience. You tone it down, basically.
As filmmakers, you don't tone it down. If
Okay.
it's true and you've got
You're a
something
scientist.
something cool to put on screen,
Okay.
you put it on screen. It is you are constantly regulating yourself and you are constantly checking yourself, but that is why we work with the experts, because it's that balance between ensuring that you've got something. You don't want people switching off, right? You don't want to just have a dinosaur sat still for an hour. You want to have something that's dramatic and engaging, but at the core of what we do is always the scientific truth. It's always coming out of the science, and so in a way the evidence, the incredible experts that we have as part of our team, and there are many of them, sort of keep us on track at all times, and we all keep each other on track,
Yeah.
hopefully, as well.
No, definitely. And sometimes, and more often than not, actually, the science that does come from our experts is cooler than something we could have ever imagined.
Okay.
It's this thing of like truth being just even more dramatic than fiction sometimes. And those moments are especially great. And I think we have a lot of those in the series where we learn something new about an animal. And when we put it to screen, we realize, oh my gosh, that is incredible. That is something I've never seen before.
And I think that's true for everything, every aspect. I mean, the science certainly, but even things like the dinosaur digs. You know, if you had asked someone to just direct a dinosaur dig for a Hollywood movie or something, you know, or an archaeological dig or whatever, you know, people see on screen, I think people realize, wow, I mean, these real digs are, I mean, incredible real life adventures, and you know, you're using drones to map dinosaur tracks, and you're using lasers, and going to these really exotic places, you know, where there's, you know, sandstorms and snakes and scorpions, and you know, it's a real incredible adventure, and a lot more exciting than anything Hollywood could possibly dream up. And so in that sense, I think everything across the board is actually a lot more exciting than you know, people can come up with in their own imagination.
Okay. How do you expect the public to receive this project?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things when you put a show out like this and you've all kind of poured blood, sweat and tears into it, you obviously hope that the public receive it in a certain way. I think, you know, we can't determine what the public reaction is going to be, but so far, from the bits that we have seen, it's been incredibly positive. I think there's a lot of love there for the brand. I think we've done our very best to kind of refresh it, reimagine it, move it on, but also there's a lot in there for the people that loved it 25 years ago, and I think we've done that justice. And so, like with anything, you can only put it out there and hope for the very best, but so far, so good.
Yeah, and I hope, more than anything, I hope people take away from this what we were just talking about, you know, that joy, that, you know, love for adventure and discovery and curiosity. Hope they take away all of that and more, and I hope they see that, you know, there's been so much love and effort poured into this, and I think it does show, so fingers crossed.
We're all in love with our dinosaurs. We
Massively.
really are. We love each of the characters, and I think when you sit down and you watch something, you think, God, I really, you know, even I'm thinking, come on, Clover, and so I just really hope that translates to people watching. I think I hope they sit down and they kind of, you know, they're hiding behind the cushion and they're rooting and they're crying and they're laughing, and if they've done that, then yeah, I think we've done our job.
Yeah, I think hopefully people will really enjoy the, you know, the storytelling and all of those aspects. But I think, in a sense, this new format really addresses some of the key aspects that I think people wanted to see or would like to see in kind of the ultimate dinosaur show. Because as much as we enjoy watching these CGI dinosaurs doing all sorts of things on screen, I think people genuinely have lots and lots of questions about the things they see on the screen. And it's like, well, how do they know this? This is like a very much a reoccurring question we get over and over again when people watch you know, all sorts of dinosaur documentary films. And I think in Walking with Dinosaurs, we really tackled that in a innovative way. You know, I mean, I think people will have all of these emotional moments and enjoy everything, but they will also learn a lot about this prehistoric world, the process of science, and all of those things. So I think in that sense, it's very entertaining. It's really exciting, but I think it's also intellectually rewarding. You know, I think when you've watched it, you had a really exciting time. Yeah. You were emotionally invested, but you also go like, wow, I learned something. You know, I learned a lot of interesting things, and I think that's really important.
Okay. That's it for me. Thank you very much for the documentary and for the interview.
Thank
Do
you.
you have anything to add? I didn't think to ask you. It was something amazing that you would have wanted to
Was
say
there
all day, but you didn't.
Copyright story or something.
I think
No, I think we've probably covered everything at this stage.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're spent anyway. So, thank you.
Thank
no,
you
thank
very
you
much.
very much. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Occupation. Dinosaurs.
Actually, I'm a paleo. Dinosaurs is fine.
Și mai departe, ca să o terminăm în stil atenție cadmere, uite 20 de lucruri pe care cel mai probabil nu le știai despre dinozauri, pe care ar fi trebuit să le știi probabil, dar nu le știi. În timp ce au dispărut de 60-66 de milioane de ani de pe Pământ, trebuie să știi că pe planeta noastră dinosaurii au trăit conform estimărilor oamenilor de știință pentru 165 de milioane de ani. Ceea ce înseamnă că au trăit de 800 de ori mai mult decât oamenii pe Pământ. Sper să avem și noi același noroc. Termenul de dinozaur a fost folosit pentru prima dată în 1842 de paleontologul Richard Owen, iar în traducere liberă înseamnă șopârlă înfricoșătoare. Are sens. Dacă te întrebi cum le ziceau dinozaurilor înainte să vină nenea și să le dea un nume, răspunsul e nu le ziceau. Bine, chinezii în China antică le spuneau dragoni. Și asta pentru că oamenii care descopereau fosile de dinozauri credeau că găsesc fosile de șopârle gigantice. Nu toți dinozaurii erau la fel ca Ghiță Mureșan, unii erau de mărimea unor găini, am spus deja, nu mai bune de făcut ciorbiță. Compognatus, de exemplu, avea câteva zeci de centimetri, în timp ce dinții lui T-Rex aveau 30 de centimetri. Știu că știi că există dinozauri cu aripi, dar deși te-ai așteptat că ei să aibă pielea solzoasă ca de șopârlă, au existat mulți dinozauri cu pene. Nu doar aripi cu o membrană din piele, ci pene. Și pentru că aveau pene, doar imaginează-ți că unii dintre ei chiar arătau ca niște găini furioase care beau mult energizant. Și pe vremea aceea Red Bull zădea aripi. De fapt, am făcut acum ceva vreme un episod în care vorbeam despre modul în care se înmulțesc animalele și vorbeam despre faptul că găinile au cloacă, în cloacă intră și iese totul, nu e plăcut să te gândești la treaba asta, dar dinozaurii fiind strămoșii găinilor, aveau cloacă, n-au nimic în comun cu mamiferele. Vorbeam tot mai devreme despre faptul că 70% din ce eclozează nu supraviețuiește, ei depuneau multe ouă, 10 de ouă. Stegosaurus, deși cântărea doar vreo 5 tone, avea un creier mic, cam cât un pumn sau chiar cât o nucă, spun unii, și că tot vorbim despre mărimi, cel mai lung dinozaur măsura 30 de metri lungime și se numea Argentinosaurus. Te las să ghicești unde a fost descoperit Argentinosaurus. Exact, în Cuba. Nu, în Argentina. La polul opus se află Microraptor, cel mai mic dinozaur care avea aproximativ 1 kg. Acești dinozauri ar fi rămas între dinți lui T-Rex fără să o observe. Filmele mai mint când vine vorba despre mărime. Așa este în cazul și al lui Velociraptor, care nu era atât de mare, deși sună interesant. Velociraptor era cam cât un curcan. Era mai mic. Printre speciile de dinozauri erbivori, precum Diplodocus, au existat unii care aveau cozile ca niște bice. Paleontologii consideră că le foloseau cu scopul de a se apăra. Un fel de strămoș chipeș pentru rinocerul nostru de astăzi este Triceratops. Trebuie să recunoști că coarnele și gulerul îl fac să arate ca un rinocer. Dinozaurii de asemenea migrau, din acest motiv sunt împrăștiate fosilele peste tot pe pământ. Cel mai probabil făceau acest lucru pentru hrană, ca și animalele din ziua de astăzi. Cel mai mare dinozaur nu era T-Rex, ci Spinosaurus. Pachycephalosaurus avea un craniu gros de 25 de centimetri. Ca să înțelegi un pic, cea mai groasă zonă din creierul unui om este de circa 30 de milimetri. Între animale avem berbecul, ca reprezentant al celui mai gros craniu în ziua de astăzi, motiv și pentru care își permite să se dea cap în cap atât de mult, iar craniul său are o grosime de 5 centimetri. Există o specie de dinozaur numită iritator. Paleontologii au numit-o așa pentru că s-au chinuit foarte multă vreme să-i recompună scheletul, nereușind de nicio culoare și erau iritați, așa că avem dinozaurii iritator. Oameni de știință, n-ai ce să le faci. Aparent dinozaurii se mâncau și între ei, dar mâncau și niște peștișori și plante, nu la aceeași masă pentru a nu deranja flora și fauna intestinală. Partea cu fauna e glumă. Sauroposeidon avea aproape 18 metri înălțime, se putea uita lejer la tine în casă și dacă stăteai la etajul 6. Există un dinozaur numit Dracorex hogwartsia, este foarte evident de unde vine denumirea din universul Harry Potter. A fost numit așa și destul de recent pentru că seamănă foarte mult cu un dragon. Există oameni de știință care spun că și dinozaurii au contribuit la încălzirea globală și asta pentru că aveau foarte multe gaze. Dieta bogată în fibre era de vină, hai să zicem. Pe lângă oase de dinozauri, paleontologii mai studiază și coproliți, adică excremente fosilizate de dinozauri. Există cercetători care ajung acasă și le spun soților sau soților că au stat toată ziua cu mâna în rahat. Imaginează-ți cât de bine ar fi mers această discuție în apartamentul Monicăi sau lui Joey. Există o specie numită oviraptor, care înseamnă hoț de ouă și era numit așa pentru că fura ouă. Era un fel de opus al cucului nostru care își depune ouăle. De ce nu l-am numit și noi mai inteligent? Nu știu, pe cuc. Ovidătător. Dacă te întreb ce făceau dinozaurii toată ziua, e bine, având în vedere că majoritatea lor erau ierbivori, stăteau toată ziua și mâncau. Că tot vorbim de erbivore, e bine, unii aveau stomacul atât de puternic încât puteau să digere chiar și copaci, nu, conuri de copaci. Dar cine știe, dacă ajungea câte o crenguță pe acolo, dacă conul trecea și creanga. Erau gatere întregi dinozaurii. Deși erbivor, Therizinosaurus avea niște gheare uriașe, puteau să zică Freddy Krugosaurus, dar, na, ce să faci, au ratat ocazia, era doar terifiant. Americanii, când au descoperit prima fosilă de dinozaur, au crezut pentru destul de multă vreme că au descoperit o fosilă de om gigantic. Americani. Există un dinozaur pe care Claudia, editoarea, l-a pus aici doar pentru a vă amuza voi, primul la faptul că nu pot să-i pronunț numele, și aceasta este prima mea tentativă de a-l pronunța cu voce tare, Piatnitzchisaurus. Piatnitzchisaurus. Un studiu din 2021 a scos la iveală faptul că Tyrannosaurus Rex nu avea dinți așa gigantici mereu la vedere să îl doară la rece, cum se vede în filme, ci erau ascunși, avea buze mari care acopereau dinții. Paleontologii cred că nu există niciun motiv pentru care dinozaurii de atunci să nu semene cu dinozaurii de astăzi și când e vorba de colorație, erau viu colorați, motiv și pentru care o să vezi în acest documentar BBC faptul că arată mai colorați decât știam până acum, pentru că în ultimii 25 de ani s-au descoperit mai multe lucruri care arătau că, măi, ăștia arătau fancy. De asemenea, paleontologii, după ce au luat scanner 3D din interiorul acestor creaturi, au tras concluzia că e posibil dinozaurii să sune ca niște gâști mari. Am descoperit în ultima vreme fosile de dinozauri chiar și în Antarctica. Descoperirile arată că e posibil dinozaurii să fie avut mătreață, să clipească, să strănute și cel mai probabil dinozaurii se află la baza poveștilor despre dragoni. Asta a fost pentru azi despre dinozauri, sper că v-a plăcut atât serialul BBC cât și intervențiile mele, cât și interviul, sper că a ieșit plăcut. Îți mulțumesc tare mult pentru atenție și pentru interesul pe care îl oferi acestui fel de episoade. Codul episodului de astăzi este Piatnitzchisaurus, scrie-l cum vrei, tu nu te chinui să scrii ca pe ecran, Piatnitzchisaurus. Bye!